Hey y'all, welcome to the Coyote Trapping School podcast. I'm your host Chris Pope, and if this is your first time listening, well, by golly, I'm glad you're listening, glad you're here. Don't let the name fool you. We love trapping coyotes, and it's probably one of the most exciting things to catch. But you know, in this podcast and all my content videos and everything, I love to catch anything, and so we're going to cover all kinds of topics from time to time, catching how to get started, how to better yourself as a trapper, and catching all kinds of different stuff. So if you got thoughts on ideas on episodes and different topics, shoot me an email, Chris, K-I-R-S, at coyotetrappingschool.com. Man, I'd love to hear it and love to get some feedback and try to get things in the works that I know people are looking for. And so today's episode is actually I'm not sure how long it's going to go, so we'll probably wind up breaking it up into two parts. But we're going to talk about nuisance trapping, and kind of it's funny how that door kind of gets open once people start realizing that you're a trapper. Then how quickly folks may start calling you, hey, I got beavers, hey, I got this, and so some kind of things in line with that. But before we get into that, I want to hit on a couple things. I apologize. I know this is a little bit late coming out. I was out of town. See, if you're listening to this, this is it's April, second week of April, Sunday, and week before last week of March, and I was in, my wife and I took a trip to Italy for a week. That was a bucket list for her, and we started, I guess 2 years ago. I was listening to Zig Ziglar. I listened to his the Ziglar podcast. Zig's passed, but his son and Kevin Miller continue the podcast and all, and I heard not Kevin Miller, Tom Ziegler, Zig's son, talking about just his dad and mom's relationship, and one of the things that he mentioned was how, you know, regardless, his dad and mom always took an anniversary trip, and probably more than just an anniversary trip, but you know, just making putting conscious effort and time and focus on their relationship, that husband and wife relationship. And I thought, man, you know, that's definitely something that I like the idea, I like doing. So me and my wife started that, and so far we've just been going on kind of weekend trips. But this year we decided, we talked about it beforehand. I know I'm getting way off topic, so if you want to skip ahead a few minutes, that's fine. But we didn't exchange any gifts for Christmas or her birthday. Her birthday's right after Christmas. But anyway, we put all that, and actually it worked out pretty good, because actually, like dead center of trapping season, January is about the cheapest times, because it's such off-peak time to go to Italy, or I guess probably Europe in general. It's their winter, but of course that's our trapping season, so I wasn't going to do that. So pushing it off to March is right on the verge of, you know, getting into spring and summer, and the prices start going up in April. So I was able to get in and do a pretty reasonable trip. I felt like we saw a lot of stuff. It was kind of neat to get over there and see some of the fashion districts and the fashion areas. We went to Rome, Florence, and Venice, and you know, actually see some fur in some shops and stuff, and a lot of leather, especially in Florence, a lot of leather, and see some fur. So that was pretty neat. And actually, I made a post about it on Instagram, but I had never even given any consideration. But the shaving cream brushes that some guys still use, but I guess you know, historically, you know, for using, I guess, powdered shaving cream and then putting that on your face, that's actually made out of badger hair. Now I don't know if that's American badger or what, but I saw some of those and some high-end shaving things in a storefront in Venice. We were walking around. I took a picture. I was like, that's pretty cool. And posted a picture, posted it on Instagram, and several people were like, yeah, I still use it. I still use that kind of shaving cream, and also, it's just neat the different things that fur gets used for. You know, makeup brushes, high-end makeup brushes, and things. I don't know. It's just it's really neat. I was listening. We were in church the other day, and I should have pulled it up. But the preacher was talking about going through Genesis, going way back. And one of the first things that happened when God created Adam and Eve, and they sinned, and Eve took the apple and then she gave it to Adam, and then they try to cover themselves up with fig leaves. At the end of that chapter, I should have pulled it up. I'll pull it up right quick. But man, it told me that us as trappers, we're doing God's work, right? Because shoot, I don't even remember. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Bear with me. Come on. All right, here we go. Adam and Eve. Okay, that's the. So this is Genesis 3, the fall, and here it is, Genesis 3 verse 21. This is a NIV version, but so God has Adam and Eve eaten the fruit and broke the only command that God gave them, and so God he's chastised them. You broke my only command, and they were trying to cover themselves up because they realized that they were naked. And verse 21 says, the Lord God made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. And I mean, that just spoke to a trapper, right? As man, one of the first, in the first couple of chapters very early in the Bible, it talks about God using animal skin to clothe Adam and Eve, the first people. And I don't know, that just resonated with me. I thought that was really cool. So there's your Bible verse for the day. But anyway, wow, that was really distracting. But anyway, had an awesome time. Going to Italy, glad to be home, glad to get back and see the family. That was a long trip to be away and moving a lot, traveling a lot, but pretty awesome experience. I'm fortunate and thankful to get the opportunity to do that. But I say all that to say I had one episode recorded ahead of time, so the week that we were gone, I had the last episode about tanneries published, but I didn't have one following up, and then I gotta get better about batching my content and having several episodes in order lined up, so I'm not a crunch every day. So that's the plan. I'm gonna post this one. There'll be one this week at the regularly scheduled time, and hopefully I'll be better about that. I appreciate y'all bearing with me. The other big topic that I didn't realize until somebody sent me a message on Instagram was Duke's 550. What's it called? It's Duke 550 Pro Series. It's not out yet, but it's looks almost identical to the MB 550. It's got a square pan, and then you can see the swivels are cheap Duke swivels. That's what I thought. Somebody messaged me on, it was either March 31st or April 1st. I was like, man, this has got to be an April Fool's thing. Because it looks. I'll post a picture of it. Spitting image almost of the MB 550, and apparently it's not a joke. Apparently it is something Duke's been working on, and they're going to try to get it available this season. I guess around convention time. Be a cheaper price, of course. I haven't seen anything official, but a few things that I've been seeing is around 170 to 180 bucks, which is, I don't know. I got mixed feelings on it. The free market and for everybody's, as long as you're not violating any rules or laws or infringements or anything like that, that's everybody's right to make products and try to improve. And if it was an improvement, and maybe it is, I'd probably have less to say. But man, it's such a hard, obvious copy of the MB 550. And I read there's been some huge threads on Trapper Man about it, and I did see Tim Caven from Minnesota Trapline Products, his response, and he was not super happy about it, just from the standpoint of how much business that Minnesota Trapline Products, is a huge Duke trap supplier and has had a good relationship, they thought, with Duke traps over the years, and a big proponent of Duke traps and a large seller of Duke traps. But I don't know that relationship's going to continue. And I hate that. I mean, I don't know. You'd think you could do a little bit of tweaking to where it would be similar, but not so blatantly obvious a copy. But to each his own, to each his own. So we'll see how that goes. To me, honestly, and I obviously, you'd have to take a look at them and try them out, and probably I won't. Depending on if it's 170 or 180, I mean, that's a $25 to $40 difference between those and the MB550s. I'm gonna spend a few extra bucks and have the real deal, if we're being honest, talking between me and you. But to each his own. I know there's probably a lot of people that give them a go and give them a try, and I hope they work out good. But that's kind of been the hot topic that has been going on lately in the trapping world. So, all right, let's get down to the nitty gritty of the actual topic we're talking about here: nuisance trapping, and you'll hear all kinds of different names for it: animal damage control, nuisance wildlife control. But I'll just label this as kind of nuisance trapping, and I'll kind of define that as I guess trapping at the request of somebody and actually receiving payment from them, right? So some people kind of view their trap line as a kind of a nuisance trap line in the sense that they get other perks. So I know there's some folks that they'll trap things for farmers, and then in exchange they get hunting rights or something like that, fishing rights or whatever. And to each his own. If that works for you, that's awesome. Rock, do your thing. But if you get into trapping, it's probably not going to be very long before somebody says, "Hey, how much are you charged to come catch these beavers?" So that's definitely something to worth having kind of thought about and considered in the back of your mind when you get, because I'd say there's almost guaranteed likelihood of a couple years, once it starts kind of getting out a little bit, you're gonna get that posed to you. And so the first thing is, obviously you got to know your laws and your laws in your area, and that probably requires an additional license, a nuisance trapping license that may be different than your regular trapping license. In Georgia, it's kind of weird, and I don't know how many other states are like this, but in Georgia it's absolutely free to get the nuisance trapping license, but you have to have a valid commercial trapping license to have a valid nuisance trapping license. And the commercial trapping license is only $30, so it's not a big deal. You do have to take a test, and it's been a while since I took it, but it's not a super rigorous test. It's a lot of knowing the basic laws around regular kind of commercial trapping or your fur trapping, and then knowing the species, knowing the nuisance trapping laws, and then knowing the species that you can and can't deal with. There are some questions around like bats specifically. Bats have a lot of regulation, and so that also tends to be kind of a bigger ticket item that nuisance trappers tend to deal with, is bats. So that would be the biggest thing to me, is you got to know what your laws are and whether you need to be licensed. I would guess yes, unless you're just trapping. If you're trapping on someone else's property, I would say most likely you do need to be licensed and have an additional license if you're getting paid. And then there's also restrictions around what you can or can't do with that animal once you catch it. Some states may require relocation. Some states specifically forbid relocation, and that's if it's not explicitly outlined, then that's kind of up to you. I think, as having my background being in wildlife biology, and having kind of studied that and thought about that a lot, I think it's probably, I prefer to just dispatch the animal. If it's not I just feel like that's more humane probably in the long run, because when you take an animal, you're taking an already stressed animal, removing it out of its home range where it's used to be, and putting it in a different location, so the animal's stressed and in a completely new environment. Well, chances are you put it in some other animal's home range, so then you throw that in there, that there's probably going to be some scrap and tussle about who gets to keep that home range, and then one of them's going to get kicked out, and so one of them's going to be moving and traveling, and so it's and really, especially in the southeast, probably in most of North America, there's not anywhere that we've got a shortage of any of these nuisance species. It's not like if you go catch beavers down the road, there's somewhere else that's just really needs beavers that it works as a good fit for moving beavers to. There's in most places, there's beavers everywhere that there's suitable habitat, and so you're not really doing anything, any good just moving those beavers from one place to another. But like I said, you got to know your laws. If you are required to relocate, or that is your preference, you got to have a willing landowner where you can relocate those animals to. You can't just go dumping them out on the side of the road or down at the state forest or anything like that, because that can get you in fact, that's one of Georgia's laws specifically prohibits releasing them on public lands, or releasing them on state lands. And that's just pure speculation. But so there again, got to be. It's all this. If you're listening to any of my podcasts, please know you got to know the laws in your state, because it varies from state to state. And I'm just kind of giving you a perspective of mine from the southeast, and specifically from Georgia, around a lot of this nuisance stuff. Another thing to keep in mind is, I guess to start with, you got to decide if you want this to be a, kind of a full-time potential endeavor, or if this is just going to be a sideline. And your location may kind of dictate that. Because if you're in a more rural area, an area that a lot of folks, if they get squirrels in their attic or bats in their attic or something like that, they're going to try to figure it out themselves, sit out in the yard with their pellet rifle or whatever. So you're not as likely to get those calls. And then even with beavers and things like that, my experience has been when you get into those rural areas, people would love for you to trap beavers, but they're not as likely to pay you to trap them. So, somebody calls up and says, hey, I got beavers eating my maple trees in my yard. Well, you shoot them a price and say, well, that's going to cost X amount of money. Man, I thought you trapped them for the fur, like it's 100 years ago and fur's worth a whole lot. There's a huge disconnect there. But that's also something that you can run into is people are all about wanting you to trap stuff until it comes time to have to pay for it, and then they tend to get reluctant. And I say that depending on where you're at. If you're in more of an urban setting, people are probably more likely to, less likely to question or balk at when you tell them that there's going to be a fee for that. That kind of goes both ways. I mean, I've had encounters, because where I am, I'm kind of semi-rural. There's kind of the suburban areas are kind of growing towards me. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of that. I like being in the rural area, but from a business perspective and a nuisance perspective, if that's something that is going to be, or you have a desire to be a significant income, then that's a good thing, because that's, you need to be in those more populated areas to be able to keep that consistent. Just thinking if I had anything else to cover on that. I think that's about it. Just I had that as a note, just the urban versus rural. If you just you're content keeping it as a sideline and picking up jobs here and there, rural, if you're in a rural area, that's a good thing. Because like I said, you have to get around the more populated areas for it to really be be a significant income, something that maybe you're looking to try to do it as a full-time gig. I guess I should say up front that I am not a full-time nuisance trapper. If y'all been following for any time, I do have another job as a forester, so I do all my trapping on the side and I do all my nuisance work on the side. But I would like, in the long term, to work to where I could grow my nuisance business, and if that could be something that could support me and my family, I would entertain making that jump. So, just full disclosure, I'm not trying to sit here and claim to be a expert nuisance wildlife business guru. You know, this is just stuff that I've learned over the years of working with some other folks, and so I have done some trapping and nuisance work through other people, and for myself as well. I guess there's a couple of avenues you can get into as kind of the residential. You know, doing bats and squirrels at homes and stuff like that, or maybe you could say kind of municipal. So depending on where you are, there's some areas of the country that have a significant, especially beaver population, and they may have full-time trappers or contract with trappers to do beaver removal, you know, for around road right-of-ways, railroad right-of-ways, things like that. And that's some stuff that I've been involved in the past. You know, it's a couple of contracts with a couple of city governments that had issues with beavers in some of their kind of retention ponds and things like that, and then also forestry companies as well. You know, especially the further south, I guess kind of the closer to the coast you get, tends to be really healthy beaver populations, and also a lot more water and a lot more kind of waterways and lowland. And so, you know, beaver can build a 1.5-foot dam and flood acres and acres of timber just because of how flat the land is. And from a timberland perspective, you know, if you start flooding acres of pine trees, that can eat into your wallet pretty quick if those trees start, or even hardwood trees. Especially in the southeast, hardwood trees tend to be more valuable. If you've got large trees, large oaks especially, those tend to be much more valuable than pines. And those, if they're flooded and inundated with water, I mean, they'll kill those too. So that's another aspect that you can consider and think of. So if you are in a more rural area, but there are some big timber companies around, or mining companies, any large landowner really, that can be good opportunities to get, you know, a more consistent income by negotiating, or, you know, offering your services to them, and there's you know, seeing what the interest is and going from there. So that's a good point to mention. You know, talking about the urban versus rural. If you're in the rural, you kind of need to cater to what's available, and, you know, trying to hit more of more really your fur bearers as opposed to your nuisance species. You know, beavers with flooding roads and fields and timberlands, that can be a big one. And then also hitting plantations, if there's plantations, quail plantations, whatever, and doing predator work with them. You know, if you find the right places, those folks are willing to pay, and that can be a good option. And then once you get into the more urban areas, it can be much more of a mix, but a lot of times, depending on where you're at, a lot of times you're going to get into your squirrels, your bats, flying squirrels, raccoons in the attics, things like that, where you're not doing as much kind of fur type trapping, trapping the bigger fur bearers, as you are more of a nuisance species. So one thing that's worth feel like worth mentioning is insurance as well. And I am no lawyer or legal expert or expert of any kind, so just my 2 cents worth is it's a good idea to have it. As much as I hate to say that in today's society, and where people are so lawsuit happy, it seems like, it's a good idea to have insurance. If you're just doing, you know, a small beaver job here and there or something, you know, especially on rural lands, you know, may not be as big of a deal. If you're going to be doing anything with any large, like a timber company or something, they're probably going to require insurance. So that's something that you're going to be, you know, you're going to have to do anyway. But man, when you start dealing with homeowners, being in and around houses, on roofs, things like that, it's almost crazy not to. And even even talking about beavers and things, in rural areas, you set a drowner, a big foothold for beavers on a drowner, and somebody's duck dog or coon dog or whatever gets caught in that. I mean, that can, and something happens, there's definitely opportunity there. So I should have looked up. There's several different options. The few that I've kind of run across, Snow and Bell Insurance, they're based out of Florida, and that's actually who I have my insurance through. And I want to say it depends on the amount of revenue that that's kind of what they base their quotes on, is the amount of revenue you do in a year. But I want to say mine was like $600 or something for this last year, and like I said, that's not full time by any means. So if you're up to where you're doing that's your full time gig, then you're probably looking at a more significant bill. But that's just $500 to $1,000 in there, maybe closer to $1,000. But anyway, like I said, it gives you some it gives me some peace of mind knowing that, and some of the areas that I work in is real high end homes, and I like having that safety net, that insurance. I mean, that's what it's for. You hope you never need it, but it's there, because when you do need it, you're gonna wish you had it if you don't. Another one is Best Buy Insurance, or Buy Best Insurance, and that's through NUCOA, so the Nuisance Wildlife Control Operators Association offers insurance through their members, and you need to talk with whoever you're talking to, and see what they cover, and talk, find out all the particulars before you just go buying something, because there's going to be different coverages and things like that. Brown Yard Group is another one, brownyard.com. So Snow and Bell is snowbellins.com. Best Buy, buybestins.com, buybestins.com, then brownyard.com, and then Crane Insurance, wildlifecontrolinsurance.com. And those are just a few that I found online, and like I said, I was able to go through Snow and Bell. Not all of these are able to write in every state, so if they don't have a license, I guess insurance license, I'm not sure how all that works, but so you may need to contact several of them before you can find one that can write a policy in your state. You can also go through, if you're familiar with your homeowners and car insurance folks do business insurance too, or commercial insurance, you can also go through them as well. But I do think that there is benefit in dealing with somebody that knows the business, knows the trapping business, knows the nuisance wildlife business. If, Lord forbid, you were to have a claim or something like that, dealing with a company that knows about the business, dealing with an agent that knows about the business that you're in, I feel like is a plus. So by all means, talk to your local insurance folks, and if they can come up with an option, then that's great. But like I said, I think it's beneficial having somebody that knows the specific business that you're in and you're dealing with. And if y'all know of any others, please shoot me a note. I'm going to put a page up on my website with all this stuff, just because I feel like this is good stuff to have, and I'd love to add anybody else on here, because this is a common question. If you're getting into this, setting traps that could potentially be lethal traps. It's just, man, better safe than sorry in my opinion. The other half of that is auto insurance. So if you're just doing this, on the side, and you don't have a big sign or anything like that plastered on your truck, then you can probably keep the same insurance you've got now. But when you start to put, signs or anything like that on your truck, advertising or outlining your business, and that you're kind of a commercial endeavor, I think that's probably a good time to look at commercial insurance, commercial auto insurance. It's a little bit more than my specific policy, a little bit more than what my personal insurance was on my truck. But again, it's that peace of mind knowing if something happens. You know, I'm not hoping that everything's going to be covered or nobody's going to see a commercial avenue or anything like that. So again, I'm no insurance expert, just from talking to my agents and things like that, and just kind of putting that all together. That's my 2 cents. So that's kind of we'll kind of wrap up on that topic. So I'm going to go into pricing, and I think we can maybe do pricing and marketing is kind of another segment, and that'll come out later this week. So stay tuned for that. But I hope that's beneficial. I hope that's helpful in you know, things that you might consider as you get some calls, or as you start to maybe give some consideration to trying to start a nuisance trapping business. So tune in, stay tuned for the next episode. We'll talk about pricing, marketing, and you know, what to do, how to go about your nuisance business. Thanks for listening.